Hi guys, welcome to OCD Recovery, Real Talk, where we talk about real things. We want to talk about sitting with anxiety because it's something that is often, that phrase is spoken about a lot. Uh, just sit with anxiety, just sit with discomfort. And we really want to talk about what it really means because people often say, what does it mean? How do I sit with it? Do I actually have to sit or do I have to do something? So, yeah, just thought we would clarify that and see and let you guys know how we sat with it and what it means to sit with it. Who wants to take the floor?
I'll say something. So something I think it's kind of comical to me, but it had me stuck for a little while. But I'm sure you guys have all been in that situation where you feel really terrible. And thanks for changing my name, by the way, in case anyone was confused. Uh, and maybe you're trying to not do a compulsion, and you are with a friend or family member or someone that can tell, and they are like sitting there like, hey, what's wrong? No, what's wrong? Wrong. Why don't you tell me? And they're trying to get you to vent or talk to them, or do a compulsion kind of thing. And for me, I think that was kind of the biggest thing, because I used to really just reach out to people all the time, and especially with my friends and family. Like if I'm pissed off or having a bad day, it's I don't know if it's just my face, but people can
It's
tell.
definitely that. It's definitely that.
I have resting bee face, or whatever you call it, when I'm in a bad mood. And so it's something where, for me personally, when I think about sitting with anxiety, and being really uncomfortable, is when you have opportunities to do compulsions, or you have hard things come up, and you know that it's not good for you to do those things, and just really really feeling it, because over time what happens too is it builds your frustration tolerance. And I recently did a video where I talked about it, but sometimes I have the tendency to overreact with certain things. And sitting with that anxiety really helps build that low frustration tolerance. So you end up being able to pursue, like, in the journey, and long term, it makes a big difference for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I think like what you touched on there is important, where sitting with anxiety does not actually mean just sitting down with it. I mean, although if you want to, you can, but it's also about basically not doing compulsions. That's what it means to sit with it and let yourself feel uncomfortable and anxious. Because it's it's carrying on with your day as best as you can. Like if you have to go pick up your kids from school, go do that. If you have to go do some groceries, do that. If you have to fill out some paperwork for your bank or something, still do it. Don't put off daily tasks just because you're not feeling great. So sitting with anxiety is essentially, I think if I can put it in words, it's trying not to fix anxiety and discomfort like we usually do with compulsions, not doing that and still carrying on with our day as best as we can.
Yeah, I think not waiting for it to be gone is crucial, isn't it? Because you'll be waiting forever with OCD. If you're waiting for that just right feeling, or for it to be totally gone, or for it to not be there, you're going to be waiting a long time, because OCD is going to know that. It's going to dig its heels in, isn't it? So I think the biggest thing, I know this, you could say this don't really make sense, but it's getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, that was a big thing for me. It took me a little while to sort of grasp that, because I was saying, well, I'm uncomfortable. How can I be comfortable? But it's not running from that. It's not trying to find a quick escape, because it is a very uncomfortable feeling. I'm fully aware of that, especially when it turns the heat up for big events, and when you really don't want it there, it's going to be there. So of course you want that quick fix, and you want it gone. But doing that actually becomes counterproductive. So when we allow that to be there and we stop the running, we just think, go on, do your worst, anxiety, OCD, do your worst, let it take over. It then loses its power. Over time, not overnight, but over time, it will start to lose its power. So just not running. I think that's the main thing for me. Just let it be
And
there, let it take over. Not
and
look for that quick
what you
overnight.
mentioned, Sam, as well, of not waiting for it to be gone, because this is what a lot of people do with like even exposures as well, right? Or if let's say they're staying off of confessing or looking for reassurance, what they'll do is they'll be like, okay, I'm not going to ask for reassurance. Is the anxiety gone? Is it going down? Is it better? Am I feeling better? Like it's kind of like
Yeah,
doing it, but then also like then monitoring, is it gone? Is it gone? Is it gone? But like you have to, when you stay off of compulsive behaviors and you're feeling anxious, or you've done an exposure and you're feeling anxious and uncomfortable, don't watch anxiety and look for it to be gone. Let it, like, in your mind, be prepared for it to just stick around for however long it wants to. And I know that sounds horrendous, but like not wanting, letting it be there is exactly what kind of sucks the, like, power out of it in a way.
yeah. It's understanding that it's going to get worse when you are cutting out compulsions. When you're not doing avoidance, it's going to feel bad. Your anxiety ain't going to go with cutting out compulsions. It's gonna you got to view it like a drug, haven't you?
Yeah.
So drug reassurance is our drug. So when we come off that, it's not going to be plain sailing. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Hence why anxiety, guilt goes up. So yeah, it's allowing it to be there and just bringing it for the ride regardless of how you're feeling.
Elliot, what about you? Because you recently had some sitting with anxiety that you had to do. So how was that?
Yeah, so I'll be pretty transparent. So it's about a month ago, and I had like a new theme try and latch. Like I had POCD try and latch, and when it happened in the moment when I got triggered, you almost feel like really shocked, right? That shock that comes with the initial trigger of it trying to morph, and in that moment, like I knew what I had to do, right? So I couldn't try and push it away. I couldn't try and figure it out. I couldn't run from the situation. I couldn't start doing all these avoidance behaviors because I knew that I'd just start off the snowball effect of like OCD latching. So in that moment, like I had to stand firm. Like, yes, I'll be honest, I did reach out to Momin. I did send him a voice note saying, look, X, Y, Z. But by and large, I just sat with it. I didn't figure out. I just carried on with my day as best as I could. I felt like absolute shit. I was a bit scared. I can't lie. I was a bit, internally panicking a little bit, but I just wore it. There's a couple of nights I didn't sleep. But yeah, for those few days it was a pretty rough. I've done a bit of light disputing in between, and then I stopped. So for about a period of 2 weeks, I was sort of caught up in the whole OCD trying to latch kind of thing. But in the end, because I didn't succumb to the compulsions and the avoidance behaviors and just carried on, like it just dissipated. So I think in that moment when especially when it tries to morph and latch, I think how you respond is really, really key, because you're better off suffering like 2 or 3 weeks than suffering for 2 years and getting involved, well, however long it takes, and getting involved into another theme. So I think it's always important just to be aware of that when it is to try and morph and move around.
That's
Gemma,
such a
like,
good point.
yeah, Gemma, because you also experience exactly that when it's try to change and morph as well. Also, your camera has really slid down slowly over as we've spoken, so just like straighten it up a little bit. Because now it's like it's in the gutter and you're just like watching it like this.
I am really sorry, everyone. I'm actually at my friend's house, so I'm not in my usual location and I'm having to be a bit makeshift, but I really
Yes,
wanted
that's
to be
fine.
here
By the
today.
way,
So,
you can also put something in like after you're done speaking so that you don't have to do it in the middle. You can also put something in front of your phone so that it doesn't slide down. If there's an object or something like that. Or I don't know if you want to put your foot against it. But yeah, you had to do some sitting with anxiety like some months ago as well, where it was trying to latch onto a new theme. So how did
yes.
that go for you?
So that was really, really difficult. So it latched with health back in January. And I reached out to Nick at the time, and I was really, really struggling to not do any compulsion surrounding it because it was a new theme and things. And I did get caught, like Elliot did better than me there, because I got caught right up in the compulsive cycle again. I mean, I was on the phone to you crying at one point, Moment. We were on FaceTime trying to talk about something else, and I'm just crying my eyes out. And you were like, "Should we talk another time?" You
Should we address this problem first and then we can talk about
Yeah,
other
I feel like
things?
there's an elephant in the room or something. I basically moved in with my mum, like didn't want to leave the house, but eventually I did push myself and start going out again. I was driving again, and it it did feel, as you say, a lot more difficult at the time, because when you cut the compulsions, it's always going to feel harder, because that's your security blanket, that's your false sense of security that you've got, and it is a false sense because realistically it's not protecting you, it's making you worse. It feels safe, but it's the most unsafe thing you can do for yourself, is to be engaging in the compulsions. So once I cut that, I got a lot worse for a while, then got even better than I was before, because it's like that's another thing now, that's another level to it, that's another thing that I'm not scared of, and that's another way that I've proved to myself that even when I'm feeling probably the worst I'd felt so far, actually, since it really latched when I was 15, 16. That's probably the worst it got. But even then, I'd shown myself that in that state of extreme anxiety, to the point where I felt like I couldn't even move my head because the physical sensations were just unreal. I still did everything. So I think the more you do it, the more you teach yourself you can. I had one a little really recently, actually, where it tried to latch to, I was going on holiday with my family, and it tried to latch to a bit of harm while I was on the plane. And I suddenly had this, I really want to get out of here. I don't feel safe, that something's going to happen on this plane. Oh, actually, I saw something earlier, and I think that was a sign that this plane's going to crash. And I could feel myself, like I always feel it now when I can see a compulsive cycle coming and I see my train of thought going, and I just go, nope, we're going to sit here. We're going to feel really uncomfortable for 4 hours. It is what it is. Once the plane's in the air, I cannot walk out that door. So I'm just going to sit here. Once it's up there, if I have a panic attack and have to sit in the toilet the entire flight and annoy everyone because I'm taking up the toilet, I'm going to do that. It's fine. And yeah, because I did that, now the fear of flying isn't latched. But if I had avoided it and got off that plane, I can guarantee you I would never want to fly again. I probably wouldn't want to drive, because it would spread. It gets in you and it spreads, and it would go, okay, actually, maybe it's not just planes, maybe it's being in cars, maybe it's any form of travel, maybe it's leaving the house is unset, and it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, your world. So yeah, not doing those compulsions at the time when things come in is so important. And I lost what we were originally actually talking about, to be honest. I went
No,
off on a bit
that's
of
no.
tangent.
Wait, I just asked you your experience of sitting with anxiety yourself recently when it morphed to a new theme. So no, I think like Elliot and you both have highlighted a very important point of not like jumping to compulsions immediately when a new thought is latching, because I also experienced that sometime last year September. Because and I've told the story to several people on one-to-one calls as well. Like my mom was going through some health related issues, so we had to like go to the hospital very frequently, get a lot of tests done, and it was a very serious problem. So naturally, like everyone was pretty tense in the house, and until and unless we didn't have more results, obviously everyone was like sitting on the edge of their seat, just feeling like something worse is about to happen, right? So it was a pretty tense time. Even though I feel like I was pretty rational throughout it. There was no like panic attacks or melting down or anything that was happening, but still obviously you feel quite nervous if your parent is involved in like a serious problem. And so this one day, just randomly, I just started to feel like my heart started to skip a beat, and and that was giving me heart sinking sensations. And then when I would like, my mind would go towards noticing, okay, is it there? That's exactly when it would happen, because I was searching for that, whether it's happening or not. And then I kind of left it there for 2 weeks, but it was still there. So I thought, okay, well, it's been 2 weeks, I've left it there. And still I wasn't panicking or anything, but I was just wondering, is there something I need to address, or do I need to do something about it? And then I just like decided to basically not do anything about it and carry on for another while. And I don't know, I think I still had the heart sinking sensations for maybe even like a couple of months. And after that, it kind of disappeared, but I wasn't constantly checking to see, is it gone? Is it gone? Is it gone? I did a little bit in between, but it wasn't 24/7. So because I kind of left it there and I tried not to pay it attention and just like carry on with my life, it did not latch, because I can pretty much, I know if I had Googled, I would have probably, it would have been like a health OCD new theme full on.
Yeah.
So, and I think the reason it helped me, like, in fact, get through that spell and also learn rational thinking, even in that little bit of a bump, was I think it's important, and it's something that I'll keep in mind in future as well. Paul, actually, I also want to ask you, like, because when it comes to feelings of anger, right? And you're trying not to, like, lash out at anyone or, like, scream or yell at them or say bad things. Um, can you talk a little bit about, if you can, otherwise you can say that moment I don't know shit, I can't talk about it. But, like, is there a parallel you can draw between sitting with anxiety and sitting with anger?
Yeah, no, so they're pretty similar in the way that, so like it's really funny that you bringing this up, because I was gonna literally bring this up next if I had an opportunity. But I had a situation where I haven't had really chronic anger or frustration in a really long time, but recently I had a situation where for probably about 5 days I was just chronically just angry, really mad at a certain person because of a situation that I didn't agree with, and I just yeah. Anyways, so when it was happening, the sensations that are
Did
similar
you
with anxiety.
did you just get sucked into the anger for a moment again while thinking about it?
A little. But so basically, when I tell you chronic angry, I was wanting to just talk about it verbally out loud. Like I was like in the mirror, like, and I would catch myself being like, "Hey, you in the mirror," and I'd have to be like, stop myself from compulsively talking out loud. And I was just getting so mad and so worked up, and it was causing a lot of body sensations. It probably raised my blood pressure, my heart, pounding a little bit, and I was just so worked up. And a compulsion was basically, you need to tell this person how you feel. You need to vent. You need to tell them your point of view so they can understand you. Yada 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 yada. And I just decided, F it, I'm not going to say anything. And the reason I was bringing this up is the previous point was, I was literally, I just had my birthday party, and my girlfriend was sitting there asking me over and over and over what was wrong with me and why I was acting the way I was acting. My face was the way I was facing, and I literally had to look at her and I said, "Just life." She's like, "What do you mean just life?" I was like, "Doesn't matter. I just don't feel good, so it's all good." And she kept trying to get it out of me. And then my best friend comes up and tries to talk to me. And I mean, I had been hammered, and it was just escalating and escalating and escalating. And I just told myself, I was like, I don't give a crap. I can be angry as I want. I'm not talking to anyone about anything. And then all of a sudden, just boom, it was gone. I felt perfectly fine. No anger, no frustration. So anxiety and anger are very similar, because they're an emotion you have to feel and get comfortable with, and realize that you don't need to express them. And the only time for me now, when I want to express something, I try to only express it if logically it makes sense. Like scientifically, if I can look at it and be like, hey, maybe this is something I actually should talk about, not something based off of how I feel. So because those avoiding those feelings is going to do the same thing it does with anxiety, right? Like it's just going to perpetuate. And if you try to make them go away, it's going to perpetuate it. And if you try to avoid them in conversations too, right? Like if you avoid confrontation, that's going to be an issue. You need to be able to talk to someone, and you don't have to yell. You don't have to get upset. You can tell your point of view, only if it's based on, not on feelings, on logic. You don't need to compulsively do it. But it's just something you have to wear. It's very similar. And I also find the more that I do this, the more it helps me be able to have better conversations with everyone. So hopefully I answered that question for you there, Momin.
No, absolutely. And I think that even with when people are really struggling to cut out compulsions, one tactic that is often used by OCD sufferers is delaying compulsions, right? Trying to delay and say that, okay, I'm going to go, like, I'm going to go till like 10 o'clock, not doing compulsions, and see how I feel by tonight. And then then when it's 10 o'clock, then it's like, okay, I'm going to see how I feel tomorrow, right? And I'm going to delay it even further. So
Yeah.
with anger, it's kind of like similar. Like if someone hurts your feelings, or like if you're angry at someone, and I think that that's a tactic I've experienced, like I've done my entire life, because I've just never had an outburst or yelling or shouting or like like none of that. I've never lashed out at anyone. For me, it's always like I don't find it helpful. I don't find it productive to do that. And so whenever I have felt angry towards people, because obviously I have, I've always postponed talking to that person about it. I've always done that. And even if someone has hurt my feelings and it's not particularly anger that I'm feeling, even if it's like hurt and sadness that I'm feeling, I postpone an immediate conversation, even if it feels like I just feel the need to like get it off my tongue, because usually it's very reactive, and usually you end up saying things that are just things that you don't mean, things are that are not balanced out. And so when you delay having that conversation, not only do you avoid yelling, screaming, and dashing out at someone, but also in that moment, when you're really feeling angry, you feel like saying like 50 things. But when you delay it, and after a few days, even if it still warrants a conversation, it boils down to just two things out of the 50 things you were thinking. Because those two things were only important, not those 50 things that were like, I have to say all of this to make my point. So delaying and sitting with anger, sadness, hurt, anxiety, all of those things. Essentially, if you want to also categorize it in a sense, it's all sitting with discomfort. It is very uncomfortable to sit with those emotions.
I did want to highlight something too. If you are delaying conversations, you want to make sure that you're not delaying them based on trying to avoid being uncomfortable by talking to someone, because it's actually a good thing to talk to people when you are a little irritated, because then you can learn how to control those emotions and be able to talk to someone in a good way. But you know,
Yeah, I think
only
it's
if it's
a
based on logic.
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act, like in the sense, like, because there are people who really have that thing of wanting to get each and every detail off their chest and having to say it. And so for someone like that, at least while working on recovery, it is important to try and practice maybe not saying anything for a while and see how that goes for them and how they feel, how that catastrophe feels like, oh my God, I can't keep it to myself, otherwise I will explode. That's where it often is mostly coming from a compulsive place. But yeah, I mean, with when people say that, wait, if I can't talk to my partner about things that are annoying me, can I never talk to my partner about it? No, of course you can. For the time being, just practice not saying anything, and then like later on, you can, as you become a bit more rational. Yes, of course, communication is important, whether it's your romantic partner, colleague, friend, whoever it is. Of course it is, but you have to give it a moment, because with OCD sufferers, we can be extremely reactive. And so therefore, like, it's important to take a little while before you jump into a conversation like that.
Yeah, I mean, I used to any sort of uncomfortable feeling. So if I was having a really anxious day, and this is why I talk about confession a lot, because straight away I'd be, oh, I got to get off my chest. I need to. You can't hold your feelings in. You can't bottle it all up. You need to get it all out. So down I'd go, confessing, venting, complaining, moaning. But it's such a fine line, isn't it? Because, like you say, there are genuine issues and genuine concerns that you will need to address in life. That's what happens. But it's knowing when you're doing it compulsively or if you're doing it for relief. So same with anger. If you're stepping in sooner before they even finish what they're saying, you need to prove your point. You need to make sure they understand you. It's that fine line, isn't it? And like you say, Momin, is that it's a balancing act. So knowing, are you doing it just for relief? Are you doing it compulsively, or is it a genuine concern? And you've got to take that risk, because you'll never 100% know with OCD, will you? It's
Yeah.
always that risk that you take, but you're going to know if you're doing it for a quick, instant fix.
Paul, by the way, I used to do that. If I felt angry at someone, I would go through and almost play out scene by scene that conversation in my head. Because in my head it felt that kind of relief as well, to be like, if I'm not doing it in person, at least I am like lashing out at them, or like proving my point and trying to say biting things to them, at least in my head, in that scenario. So I would go on and on and on and on until the point where I could, by the end, I would be able to distill what I actually wanted to say. So it was almost this compulsive thing that I did of having that conversation over and over again in my head to determine eventually that, okay, this is what I want to say. And that was, in a sense, unhealthy, because I mean, yes, it eventually helped me communicate like the important things, but I think it was unhealthy in the sense that while I was doing that, I was just feeling so bitter, and like physically it just doesn't feel great. It's not a great thing to regurgitate that kind of hate and bitterness like towards someone over and over again. It just like, it's not a great place to be in. And I used to feel silent bitterness quite frequently in my chronic years of suffering. Elliot, were you, because I thought you were about to say something
We often
but I don't know.
Sorry, a second. I didn't catch that.
Sorry, I was just saying, I thought you were about to say something in between, but I don't know if you're just silent or
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, I
thinking
was gonna
about something.
say,
Mm.
yeah. I was gonna say, especially for me, like what I found very helpful, especially from like a fear perspective, was like not trying to do too much. Like a large part of it is just accepting that you're going to feel like crap for the time being, and you're going to have to like have that discomfort there. And we always think that we need to be doing something to get rid, but a lot of the journey you don't really need to be doing that. I think Claire Weeks's books, self-help for your nerves, I think when she speaks about just floating through it, I think you just need to do the best you can just to leave it, because obviously in that moment, say you get triggered, right, in those couple of seconds immediately after you get triggered, I think they're the most important moments, because if you're responding to it in the sense that you're pushing it away, trying to be rid, then it's just going to keep coming back. So if you can just refrain from doing that in that moment after you get triggered, bit by bit by bit, you're just going to slowly get back to a normal state. And like obviously you need to break down your beliefs about, you know, the anxiety and the discomfort, etc., etc. But I always used to think, when I get triggered, right, I've got an opportunity now to not engage with it, to not push it away. And if I can just keep doing that, like bit by bit, I'm going to give myself a really good chance of recovering. So I used to treat like the trigger, I used to take it quite seriously in a way. Like I used to just try not to, you know, force it away and push it away, because, you know, if you're doing that in the moment, then you're just inviting it back each time. So that's what I found to be quite beneficial. You don't really need to be doing things, being so proactive all the time, which I think is a key part.
I mean, I spent years trying to chase like a perfect feeling, or like I said at the start, like the chasing that feeling of it being completely gone. I remember in the build up to, let's say, going on holiday, I'd be so desperate to not feel like crap, or like you're saying, Elliot, a new trigger. So if you're on a lookout for a new trigger, then OCD is going to know that, isn't it? If you're going, oh my god, don't latch now, please, I don't want to be triggered now, then that's like waving a red flag to a bull, isn't it? So, like you said, it's that big. So when you first get triggered, that sort of 5 seconds, 10 seconds after that, not trying to run from it, let it take over, let it do its worst, and over time it'll go, oh, there we go, there you are, OCD, and you're not seeing it, you're not putting an over importance on it, and you're not seeing it as such a big threat. Because if you're so wary of OCD latching, then it's going to hit you with a boom, isn't it? It's going to hit you with so much power. But if you're not caring it latches, if you go, right, you can latch, yes, it feels like shit, yes, I feel like crap, but you're going to carry on with your day regardless. I think that's massive, rather than going, oh my god, what are you next? Please don't ruin this, please don't ruin that. Then it's going to feel like it's a much more powerful monster, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, I think in like, sorry, Gemma. I think it's important to be like easy on yourself as well, because it's not going to be like an overnight thing. You're not going to be able to do that straight away. Like you are still going to engage with the feelings of discomfort to start with, but it's just going to take a lot of practice, and you're going to make mistakes, and there's probably going to be times when you do it wrong. Like, you know, I made so many mistakes in my recovery journey, but you just need to be compassionate and just, you know, take it trigger by trigger, literally. Sorry, Gemma.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say, as Paul said, it's it's just not responding at the time over time is building up your frustration tolerance. So I think the more times you're triggered and don't react to it, the more you realize that you don't actually have to react to it. It's just proving to your brain that you can just sit in that discomfort. And the more you sit in discomfort, it's like anything, you have to practice to be good at it. You have to build that muscle to be good at it. You have to actually feel really uncomfortable for a long period of time to realize that you can actually just live in discomfort and you don't need to do anything to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Carry on, Paul.
I was gonna say for me too, it's like if you really look at the core fear, like when it comes to every single theme, the biggest one that and I've seen some of you guys talk about it in videos too, obviously, but the fear of fear and sitting with it, like sitting with that uncomfortable feelings over time, it's gonna help obviously like with that as well, because like at the core of everything, I that is like, in my opinion, the biggest driver that is just building up everything. And the more you work on that and sit with that discomfort, the easier it's going to make any kind of theme that's going to try to come up, or anything coming up in the future.
And I think another important point in that is also not wanting to have everything figured out right here and right now. That's another important part of it, because when we say that, okay, sit with the anxiety right now, so then you want to say that, okay, I'm going to sit with the anxiety, but will it get better in this many days? Or, okay, if I'm just sitting with the anxiety, what other things can I do recovery wise? What are my next steps? So you still get into that mode of like trying to figure things out, trying to know what's next. So allowing yourself to, and this is what we touched on, I think in the last real talk when we were talking about feeling hopeless, is allowing yourself to feel lost and confused at times. And I know sounds horrendous and sounds counterintuitive, but that's exactly what you need to do in that moment. With sitting with anxiety, it's also sitting with uncertainty, with a little bit of confusion, with a little bit of feeling lost, and not having everything answered right there and then. Because that's another compulsive cycle we get into when particularly not wanting to sit with anxiety.
When I had the sorry.
You carry on.
Okay. When I had the relapse in January and I'd like just started doing everything again, and I think I'd been like doing everything as normal for a couple of weeks, and I sent Nick a voice note, and I've still got it saved in my phone. It's great. And I was like, "Hi, yeah, I'm doing absolutely everything. I'm feeling okay." And I was like, but it's just not really letting up at all. I have been doing absolutely everything as normal, but it's not. And then I should have known at the time, but I think when you're in it you don't see it, but as soon as you're outside of it you're like, really, why did I do that? I know exactly what was going on there. I was watching it like a hawk, and it's not going to go while I'm watching it like a hawk. It's never going to go, oh, you're really, really scared. I'll just leave then, shall I? You have to allow it to be there, as well as allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable. You also have to not be waiting for it to go, which I know when you say all of these things, it sounds impossible because there's so many elements to it. You have to sit with discomfort. You can't watch it. You have to do that. It feels like it is like a mammoth, impossible task. But as I say, it really is just practicing. It is just building it up over time. Get good at sitting with discomfort. Okay, now stop watching it like a hawk. Start introducing other things into your life so that you're not just focusing on that. You don't have to do it all at once. It's not like, oh, I need to be doing this, then I need to be doing this, or shall I do this at the same time as this? It is just trial and error a lot of the time. Sometimes you're going to do something and you're going to go, oh, that's a bit compulsive, I'll take that out. I think it's really important to stop looking at this as something that needs to be done and wrapped up and finished within 6 months. You need to kind of look at it as like a lifelong changing over time, like actually changing the way you think. You've been thinking this way for however old you are, 20, 30, 40, in Brian's case 70. You've been thinking like this for that long, you need a good amount of time to actually start thinking another way. It's not a quick fix, unfortunately.
I think what you got to remember is when we talked about where new themes latch in or a new trigger, it's easier said than done when we say, "Oh, don't engage with it," because the realness of OCD, like the real factor, the convincingness, if that's a word, how you feel like it's an exception, how different it feels.
I think that's a word.
Yeah.
We'll go with it. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's going to feel completely real, like your exception, like it's new. So it's easy just to say, "Oh, it's OCD, don't worry about it." But that's what it will do. That's its trick. Because it feels so real, it's so easy to fall into that compulsive cycle again, isn't it? With your health OCD, Gemma, because that was a new thing for you, you're suddenly thinking, "Oh shit, is this OCD? Is this a genuine concern? I haven't dealt with this before." And because that feels so real, you can't tell the difference if it's OCD or not. And that's why you're watching it like a hawk. Like now, you can go, "Oh, I shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that." But because at that time when it first latches, it's quite overwhelming, isn't it? It just takes over everything. Point where you don't know if it's OCD or not. And you got to remember that's what it's going to do. So you've got to take the risk that even if it is real, even if it's not real, you got to deal with it the same way, because it's going to try and catch you off guard, and it's going to try and it's not going to latch to something that you know how to cope with. It's going to try and keep you on your toes and just latch to something that or if you're putting a boundary on it, if you're saying please don't latch to that, then it's going to go after it, isn't it? So you just got to take the risk regardless of whatever it latches to.
I'd say like the one saving grace of that though is that you know that you've already had OCD and you've had it latch already, so you've got a rough idea of how it works. So I think like when like I had POCD try and latch, like I obviously I know I've got OCD, right, and I know how it operates, so I've got a rough idea of like what I need to do. So I'm not saying it's not really scary and like really feels really real in that moment, but I feel like when you've actually had your original theme, whatever that might be, you know, HOCD, ROCD, OCD, when you've had that initial main theme, like you sort of have that framework that you can then use from that in the new theme that tries to latch. So I found that quite helpful, you know. I think you can translate it across the different themes because OCD operates in the same way. Like it hunts out what you're scared of, and it's just going to try and move around that. And yeah, I think having a certain theme like helps.
Like if I give an example of what it did to me, so I was making really good progress, and all of a sudden it latched to the tools. So everything that I've learned, so with POCD, harm OCD, breaking down the beliefs, with the guilt-related themes, it suddenly latched to the tools, and it felt like everything I learned was out the window, and it just hit me from a completely new angle. And I thought, "Oh shit, I can't deal with that trigger because the tools now don't work." So I just felt completely lost. And you see how crafty that was. It got into what was helping, and then it made me doubt the whole recovery process, the whole methods, all the we learned with Albert Ellis and the books. And
Even though if you think about it, like let's say it's whatever that it's not, these aren't the right tools, right? The fact that it's still giving you relief does so then does it matter if it's right or not? Because like it's still made you
I
feel
had to
a
take
lot
the risk.
better. So
I had
that's
to take even if the tools weren't right, I had to take the risk and that is when I had to bring, because the anxiety was so high then. So I
yeah.
thought, you know what, I can do about that in the now. I've just got to let that anxiety be there and just continue with the tools, because it's going to go, boy, is that
Because
right?
you have
It's going
to
to still
you
doing it.
also have to then think that, okay, what's the alternative then? What's the other option, right? Because and I often ask this to people on calls as well, like when you say that you have to cut certain compulsions and they say no, I don't want to, right? So then I ask them, okay, so what do you think is the alternative to this? And then they also don't have an alternative. So I say, well, I mean, this is probably like the only other thing that you have to try, because you've tried reassurance, you've tried compulsions, you've tried this and that and avoidance and whatnot. So, and mindfulness and EMDR and whatever, might as well give this a shot and see how that goes. Any last things that anyone wants to add?
Something that we talk about.
Yeah, go on, Sam. Sorry.
Every time.
I was starting to
Go on,
talk about,
mate.
Right here. Something that we talk about a lot is the internal thermometer. I mean, I think that's big with sitting with anxiety. Don't watch it like a hawk, like Gemma says. Don't measure it. Don't want it all gone. Just drop that and let it be there. The worst thing you can do, it becomes so counterproductive and it just backfires if you're really trying to control it. If you're trying to resist anxiety, it isn't going to work. So just drop that thermometer. I say that a lot.
Yeah, I'd say for me, just like, yeah, allow it to be there. Like, you don't need it all gone right away. Like you find that you can still kind of have a life even if you do feel discomfort. You can still do the same things. I remember when I was really suffering with HOCD, I could still go out, I could still work, I could still do certain things. So you don't really need to have it gone so desperately. You sometimes find that life's pretty similar to if you don't have anxiety or discomfort. If you just really push through. I know it's so hard, but you can have a pretty similar life to before and after recovery. So you don't need to put so much emphasis on not feeling discomfort. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Paul, do you want to like jump in the boat and compete with these guys, or are you throwing like, just giving up now?
Give us a mic drop, Paul.
Yeah, I don't know. For me personally, I feel like when it comes to like sitting with anxiety and stuff like that, I feel like I've had to deal with some really just ridiculous body sensations and stuff like that. But one thing that is really great about it, at least for me anyways, is um it's really helped me set a solid foundation where I can just be uncomfortable and just do my daily life no matter what happens. And I think having that confidence is just so amazing. Like the book, At Last Life, Paul David, I think when I really got my life, like where I was like, doesn't matter what my theme is, doesn't matter how I feel, doesn't matter if I'm even doing compulsions or doing dumb shit that I shouldn't be doing. If I can just get up every day and be uncomfortable, like it doesn't matter how I feel or think or what's going on, like I can live my life, even if sometimes I'm not happy or uncomfortable, and I think sitting with being uncomfortable is kind of the foundation for that.
A moment, this is where our favorite word comes into it: regardless.
Regardless of how you feel. Yeah, regardless of how you feel. And yeah,
Regardless of how you
I think that, I mean, for me, just one of the important things from this talk right here is also just remembering that sitting with anxiety can also mean sitting with annoyance, sitting with irritation, anger, sadness, hurt, all those things, because it's all about sitting with discomfort. And anxiety does present itself in all those various emotions as well. Because the other thing people often say is that, oh, I'm not like feeling anxious, I was just feeling sad or angry, so I needed to like do something about it. No, it's pretty much like while you're suffering chronically, they are mirror images of each other, and they in many ways they have to be treated the same way. Because if you think about it, you try not getting rid of that sadness or anger or whatever negative emotion it is making you feel like everything is going to be ruined. So that catastrophization is exactly what needs to be tackled by sitting with anxiety or emotions either way. Gemma, I think you're only the only one who hasn't spoken. It's not mandatory, you don't have to, but if you want to.
No, I've got two things that I
Uh-huh.
just wanted to quickly say. So I know Paul's just mentioned it, but I also just want to mention how important the book Paul David At Last Life is for recovery. It is unbelievable. It's the best thing I've read. I think for me, it's actually been even more important than the first book. And I know that's going to be controversial because the first book's incredible, but that book for me was just, I had to reread it when I had the relapse. You and Nick both said to me, I think you should probably reread that one. And I did. And it's the best thing that I could have done at that point, because it just reminded me again that I don't actually have to do anything and I can just sit with it. And then the second thing I wanted to say is that once you've learned the skill of sitting with extremely uncomfortable anxiety, there's not much else you can't really do, like that you find difficult anymore. Obviously I find things difficult, but every time I do something now, I just go, well, it's not as hard as that was though, is it? So realistically I can do it. So there is this kind of nice sense of feeling really achieved once you've kind of come through that level of anxiety. You know,
It's very
you feel
liberating.
proud of yourself.
It's very
Yeah,
liberating to
it
experience,
is very
like,
liberating.
because you're like, what? I went through that. So yeah.
Yeah, because you just don't think that the human brain can physically put you through that much, and it has, and you've come out the other side of it. So yeah, it is a liberating feeling. So, you know, you have got that to look forward to.
Yeah, just go through that peak. I know it sounds,
Mhm.
again, easier said than done. Just go through that peak, and once that peak is over, you're going to see a different side of things. That's important. Um, guys, thanks for being here. Gemma, thanks for being here despite like us ruining your hangout. Paul, sorry for ruining your morning, but thanks for being here. Um, have a good Oklahoman day, and have a good day the rest of the day, you Brits as well. It's midnight on my evening, so I'm
Go
going to
to
stop
bed
unwinding. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to go to bed
for
in 2
once.
hours.
You're
Yeah,
yawning, Mogan.
it's going to be a couple of hours, but anyway. All right. Thanks for being here. Nice talk.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Speak to you
Bye.
later.
Yeah.
Bye.